հարգելի գործընկերներ, այսօր Կենտրոնական բանկի խորհրդի նիստում որոշեց անփոփոխ թողնել վերաֆինանսավորման տոկոսադրույքը։ Խնդրենք պարոն Գալստյան ներկայացնի, որից հետո նաև կներկայացնենք 2022 թվականի ֆինանսական հաշվետվությունը։ Նաև պարոն Գալստյան դա կներկայացնի։
Շնորհակալություն։ Ես կսկսեմ դրամավարկայինից, հետո միանգամից եթե դեմ չեք նաև կանենք ֆինանսական կայունության հաշվետվության կարճ ներկայացում, որից հետո արդեն հարցը։
And we'll listen to your question
thereafter. 2023 թվականի մայիսի 2-ին
Կենտրոնական բանկի խորհուրդը on May 2023 decided to leave the refinancing rate unchanged at 2.75%. The 12-month inflation in March 2023 decreased sharply. By the end of the month it was 5.4%. The 12-month core inflation has also reduced considerably, reaching 6.4%. In Q1 of 2023, slow economic growth rates persisted around the world and in the main partner countries of Armenia. It is estimated that the problems of the US banking system are not systemic and will not have significant macroeconomic effects. The 12-month inflation continues to decrease in Armenia's partner countries, yet the overall inflation environment remains elevated due to sustained high demand and pressures from the labor market. The environment remains elevated. The central banks of partner countries will therefore continue to tighten their monetary conditions in the near future. Tight international financial conditions are contributing to lower prices in commodity markets. As a result, the inflationary effects of the global economy on the Armenian economy continue to weaken. Activity in the domestic economy of Armenia persisted in early 2023, which was driven by strong growth reported in the services and construction sectors. Aggregate demand remains high amid continued large inflows of capital and labor, enlivened tourism, and increased incomes in the Armenian economy. As a result of implemented contractionary monetary policy, appreciation of the dram and weakened inflationary effects from the external sector, the 12-month inflation in Armenia is reducing. Nevertheless, high demand and inflation expectations further contribute to sustained wages and high inflation in certain product groups and services. The board of the Central Bank of Armenia finds it expedient to leave the policy rate unchanged. The board will be consistent in taking action required to handle demand and stabilize inflation expectations. According to the monetary policy outlined, the 12-month inflation will rapidly decrease and will come below the target in the near future and will stabilize around the 4% target mid-term. The Board of the Central Bank of Armenia estimates that the risks of inflation deviating from the projected path are mostly balanced. In the event of these risks materializing in any direction, the Board stands ready to respond accordingly to fulfill the price stability objective. Thank you. And unless you mind, let's move on to financial stability report. before they switch on the presentation, let's handle the questions on monetary policy, please. Thank you, Mr. Galstyan. In your analysis, you mentioned that there's been changes in the structure of inflation. Imported foodstuff and fuel prices start to go down, and rigid price goods are getting slightly more expensive. In your opinion, is this a factor of the heating of the services and goods market for well-known reasons? Citizens moving to Armenia from other countries and Russia, or are there any other factors that impact these prices? And what's the time horizon of this phenomenon? Thank you. Thank you for the question. I believe it's a very important question, so I'd like to dwell on the answer at some length. As in many other countries in the world, in Armenia as well, we observe the eventuality where there is a certain fall in the prices of goods in view of the stringent monetary policy on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's the post-COVID value chain getting back on track and increased demand that also are factors. In this respect, both in the United States, in Europe, as well as Russia and Armenia, for that matter, as a result of reduced prices of international food, in our consumption basket, the prices of essential foods have a trend of decrease. The second reason for reduced inflation is the base effect. You may know that through last year we had a high baseline as a result of which in the goods inflation factor is significantly reduced. For us, it's more important, and we pay significant attention to the second part of that you highlighted pertaining to services or the rigid prices. There are several developments here that lead us to believe that our struggle against inflation, in this struggle against inflation, we have not yet finally triumphed. To begin with, it's the external demand-driven services, persistent growth in their prices. If in the event of goods we see that the prices are significantly falling, which in a short term will even result in that, in our assessment, the inflation may be even below the central bank set target, but in the services we nevertheless observe higher inflation than the target 6, 7, 8% in monthly term annualized. We have 12% inflation for some services, which to some extent is determined by very strong external demand, and the second factor that affects it is the rise in the wages in this country. In one of those slides you saw that our wages growth exceeds not only the real GDP growth but also productivity, which you understand has a significant inflationary potential. The other issue that prevents us from resting is inflationary expectations. The inflationary expectations have significantly gone down from the level we have observed last year. Nevertheless, inflationary expectations remain to be quite high compared to those years where we could definitely say that the inflationary expectations were anchored. So as a combined effect of these three factors, the board decided this time also to keep the rate unchanged, hoping that the signals we sent, whether through the rate or appreciated forex will also have an impact on restraining contracting the external demand. As a result, we will see a certain fall in the service prices, which will allow us to get back to expansionary monetary policy.
Նաև նշում եք
You also
վերլուծություններում, որ
mention in your analysis that
այնուամենայնիվ
nevertheless
աշխատավարձերի աճը
the growth in
պահպանելու են
wages will
2023-ին եւ
persist
էլի
through
ձեր նշած
23
զգալիորեն բաց է
and
լինելու
will be
հնային
significantly
աճից,
over the
այսինքն
growth
18% է
of
ճիշտ եմ
GDP,
նշում, ինչը
around
բավականին բաց
18%,
թիվ է
which, if
կանխատեսվող,
I remember
եւ
it correctly, is quite
գործազրկությունը
high.
եւս
Unemployment
այդպես
as
չակետավոր
well,
բնականոն
quote
մակարդակից
unquote,
փոքր բաց է մնալու այս
will
տարի,
remain slightly
այսինքն
above the
արդյոք
quote
պատելի է
unquote
ենթադրել,
natural level.
որ
Can we assume
բնաջային
that
սպասումների խարսխումը դուք ակնկալում եք
anchoring
ոչ
of inflationary
վաղ, քան
expectations is
հաջորդ
expected
տարի։
no sooner than next year? It would be hard to estimate at this point as to when we will observe a significant decline in inflationary expectations. The proportion of individuals that expect that the inflation will remain high or very high in Armenia, when will their proportion decline? There is a time lag in the transmission. Alongside the increase in inflation, there was a certain time lag on the expectations. Hopefully this will happen sooner than later, but as a result of our policy, the main message that we convey to the public is the following. The central bank shall create a situation in mid-term for the Republic of Armenia having inflation commensurate to the target. As for the first part of your question, which pertains to the wages, we see here that in the Armenian economy there are sectors where high wages persist, onboarding new employees. If I'm not mistaken, through last year our IT in its weight in GDP has quadrupled. We essentially see that non-residents coming in to operate in Armenia are receiving pretty high wages. As a result of our policy, naturally, which is what other central banks also do, if we look at the Phillips curve, one of the objectives is to weaken the overheating so that the finances that deliver economic agents or natural persons should divert these funds to savings rather than consumption, which will also weaken inflation naturally. I apologize if I wasn't following attentively. Last time there was agriculture in the list of active growth sectors. There were certain issues, some produce was banned in Russia, there was fertilizers issue. What's the impact of all this? The agriculture's share in economic growth in 2022, essentially, if we compare agriculture to other sectors, we'll see that the growth in agriculture was not significant. It contracted both in volume as well as in its weight in contributing to the growth. Through last years, the sectors that contributed to 12.6 economic growth is services, trade, construction, processing industry to some extent. As for this year's projections, I do not believe that through the year agriculture will contribute significantly to our growth. We continue to believe that the main economic activity in the country shall continue to be contributed by services and construction sectors. If there are no questions, let me present to you the financial stability report, and there will be another Q&A after that. The financial stability, development prospects and risks. We will speak about the financial system development, basic risks of financial stability, results of our stress tests, and financial stability policy interventions, as you see on this slide. Because of geopolitical tension and high uncertainty in 22, our financial system ensured natural course of financial mediation function. Compared to other players in the financial system, the banking and pension system assets have relatively at high growth rates. The assets of the banking system account for predominant majority of the financial system assets, about 84% on the pie chart. As a result, in the financial stability report, we predominantly focus on banking sector developments, the possible sources of future risks, as well as the resilience capacity estimates, that is the stress tests. Through the year in the lending market, there is increased activity. Loans increased by about 16%, which is comparable to 2020 pre-COVID years average growth rates. At the same time, given the high economic growth, the deposits fell ahead of lending in their growth. The entry of non-resident subjects into the system resulted in the growth in deposits increasing over the growth of lending. We talked whether this should have been steered towards lending. We exhaustively covered that the last time. The increased activity in the lending sector has been observed along every dimension. Consumption, agricultural, business loans, end of year had 10 to 12 growth rates percent. Mortgages maintained the high growth rates of preceding years. In conditions of high economic growth, the lending growth was accompanied by increased quality in the loan portfolio. NPL has low weight compared to its long-term average and even the baseline before the pandemic. On the right-hand side, it's the mortgage non-performing loans below 12%, agricultural NPL as well, consumer loans, which are the most risky and most volatile as a rule. Historically, their NPL share has also decreased compared to the shock year of 2020 when it was almost 14%. At this point it hovers about around 6%. As for business loan, their NPLs are about 4%. In 2022, the main prudential indicators of the banking system significantly improved. In particular, over the preceding lengthy period, the low return rate in the observed period has significantly improved. It's the blue line. ROE, return on equity, has been over 20% in reporting years. ROE was contributed to non-loan incomes, great influx of new clients, that is, payment balance, payment and settlement, as well as forex. The gray line is non-interest loan, and the net interest income, which is the red line. It stayed on the level of last year's, but non-interest incomes have increased significantly, basically determined by the influx of new clients. There was also growth in capital adequacy and system liquidity indicators. As a result, we significantly improved the banking system absorption of losses capacity, which may emerge when certain risks materialize. The capital and liquidity position improved both by regulatory buffer requirement gradually phasing in, as well as the banks maintaining additional surplus provisioning above the regulatory requirements. The adequacy minimum level is in blue, followed by capital buffer, which we introduced in 2019, end of 2019, if I'm not mistaken, followed by systemic banks buffers, which are specific only to systemic banks, and we added on the red part, which is the anti-cyclical buffer, since the banks this year have accumulated significant profits. One of the central bank policies was expecting that down the road there could be cyclic developments during which our financial system may encounter certain risks. We at this point prudentially imposed upon the banks to maintain a new type of buffer, which we called anti-cyclic buffer. At this point, the anti-cyclic buffer is 1.5% in drum terms, about 90 billion drams, which will enter into effect 60 billion in May and another 30 billion in August. As for additional capital stock, which is the light blue, this is the additional surplus which the banks, irrespective of prudential requirements, maintain for their own risk management eventualities. So in conditions of high economic growth, the banking system ensured natural course of lending to the economy, and the growth rates in lending were commensurate to the increase of real incomes in the economy. One may assume that the banking system, in general terms, without creating additional inflationary pressures or strengthening them, at the same time was conducive for economic agents to reduce their loan burden and thus mitigating the lending risks respectively. In previous and current years, determined by high inflationary expectations and a significant increase in the policy rate, the current and new loan interest has increased relatively little. The capital, liquidity and asset high level of the banks allowed them to refrain from hiking up loans on interest or adjusting them. Apart from that, mitigation of the interest rates have been contributed by the high competitiveness between the banks and great influx of funds through the year. As a result, there was contained servicing burden of the loans. If we look at this, the blue line, which is the servicing expenses in the GDP, significantly went down, and the red line is the quarterly servicing expenditure, which also has a certain trend to decrease. So the main message that we want to convey here in our financial stability report is as follows. The additional incomes that the banks had, non-interest income, that is allowed the system to significantly be milder in increasing the interest on loans, because as you know, the central bank refinancing rate is 10.75%, if I'm not mistaken. We started increasing this as of December 2020, when it was 4.25. So if you look at the delta between 4.25 and 10.75, which is 6.5%, the lending product interest increase of the banks fell below the increase of the central bank's rate growth. This was made possible by several factors: prudential interventions, competitive environment, but first and foremost it was due to the income that they received from servicing non-resident clients.
Financial
stability risks, we can single out two basic risks. One of them is determined by exogenous factors and the other by predominantly internal developments. In particular, because of geopolitical uncertainty, the global and internal economic development prospects and inflation risks remain high. Ancillary to the latter, we also think that the debt burden in the economy may also grow, and there could be the risk may materialize of losing assets. Over the most recent years, another risk is the mortgage and real estate prices increase, which attests to the certain overheating of both markets. In particular, within the last 5 years, the increase in the mortgages was accompanied by the increasing real estate prices. So between the latter two, there is mutual correlation which can attest to the existence of overheating risk. We are somewhat concerned about the developments in the real estate market, and I'll talk about that in the next slide at greater length. The central bank analysis and estimates indicate that as of December 2022, the real estate possible overvaluation was 16 to 20%. At the same time, one must mention that already in Q1 of 23, according to our estimates, this overestimation has increased, amounting to about 25%. Our estimates are that we have several methods of measuring this. The methods are outlined in the Financial Stability Report. I'll skip referring to them, but the main message to be drawn from this is that the central bank over the last 2 years has been continually proclaiming or speaking about real estate overvaluation in the real estate. In Q1 of 23, our observations indicate that it's the highest level, 25%, that is. As already mentioned, the banking system currently is characterized by capital and liquidity high buffers. Therefore, the macro stress test results indicate that even in the pessimistic scenario, the system will be able to absorb possible losses, maintaining the continuity of financial mediation function. Nevertheless, in increased uncertainty, the cyclic risks materializing probability is deemed to be high, and the central bank ascribed importance to the commercial banks looking at their balance sheet, capital, equity, risks distribution, and dividends to maintain balanced and reasonable approaches there too. Essentially, we acknowledge the following. As a result of our policy, we attempt to maintain prudential anti-cyclical, essentially, policies. In good times, the financial system should keep some of its returns to address non-positive potential developments naturally, and keeping the financial system safe from additional risks. About the financial cycle, the cycle index increased over last year. It comprises several factors, in particular activity changes in the lending market, some early warning alarms, loans in GDP, sectoral loans increase, spread in the interest, real estate prices. So in general, this index reflects the risk appetite relative developments over the year. The ancillary to the lending market, the cyclic risks were generally balanced, neither underestimated nor overestimated. The only exception is the mortgage, where certain overheating risks have become apparent. This is also observable in the results of disaggregation of risk. The financial cycle increased lion's share is determined by real estate prices and mortgage market developments. You see that essentially in our chart. It's the yellow and blue segments that have a significant impact on this most recent development. Hard to discern from a distance, but trust my words. Considering the above, as well as the fact that the current high equity allow for natural lending to the economy by the banks, the central bank, describing importance to the future trends of risk management, found it appropriate to galvanize macroprudential toolkits, pursuing an objective to increase the resilience and strength of the banking system, contributing to actual lending continuity by the banks to the economy. In this context, the central bank has increased by 2 notches the anti-cyclic provisioning requirement as of May 24. The anti-cyclic buffer should be covered by 1% as of August 23, 1.5% in the mortgage and real estate markets. To target those overheating risks, we have introduced, and as of April 22, entered into effect the loan-to-value macroprudential limit, which is for drums it's 90%, for forex mortgages 70%. The LTV instrument not only contributes in the event of the borrower's default, reducing the losses of the lender, but also contributes to increased solvency of the borrowers or reduced chances of default. I'll conclude the presentation at this. Questions are welcome if at all. Mr. Galstyan, if we're talking financial system uncertainties and expectations, what determines the fact that the terms of the loans have slightly increased? Mostly this is determined by the mortgages, because essentially, the terms of mortgages are longer than business or consumer loans. Since the growth was mostly determined by also increased volumes in mortgages, the average weighted terms have extended. So if we deduct the mortgages, we should look at the terms. I think there has not been any significant changes. The main growth was determined by mortgage volumes increase, please. Is there any indication as to what proportion of the lending is accounted for by loans to non-residents? We have the absolute numbers, but in the report we did not reflect on that. The predominant majority are residents. The loans to non-residents, I don't believe that they have changed over the dynamics of preceding years. So the main operations that banks have had with non-residents was non-interest income generating operations, onboarding, servicing, forex, exchange, mostly that. About deposits, if I got the statistics right, through the last year there was a significant growth in deposits by non-residents.
Եվ հիմնականում դա
predominantly, if I remember it correctly,
Արդյոք այս
these
պատկերը
were
փոխվել է
demand
եւ
deposits.
կարելի է ինչ-որ
Did anything change here, and can we make preliminary conclusions
տեղափոխված
about
քաղաքացիների
the
ռելոկանտների վարկագծի
relocated
շուրջ,
citizens' behavior?
դարձնում են ավանդները, ասենք թե ժամկետային,
If they
ապա նրանք
make
ավելի
their deposits
ժամկետ սցենարներ են
timed deposits, they're looking for longer horizons of staying in Armenia. This chart indicates that if the green line is the growth in total deposits, but the non-residents have increased not with the same speed, so the non-residents growth has mostly contributed to the green line. As for changes in behavior, naturally the banks are carefully following the dynamics in behavior of relocated individuals. Our most recent German economic team survey comes to attest, if I'm not mistaken, that a bigger proportion of the relocants has longer term plans with Armenia. At least over 0.5% said that over a year they plan to stay in Armenia. As a result, the banks have adjusted and will adjust their products. If your observation takes place, if the demand deposits are transformed into time deposits, the banks will be guided towards more risky, so to say, dimensions in their operations. As a result, if this behavior maintains, we may expect a certain increase of other types of lending as well.
Հիպոթեկային վարկավորման հետ կապած այդ
Mortgage
քննարկվում էր
bill
ապահովitով հիպոթեքի տրամադրման
about
արգելքի
prohibiting forex mortgages. The opponents to this bill stated that the banks may encounter an issue in placing funds attracted in forex. Are the banks beginning to consider these placements, and how? The cornerstone of the rationale was managing forex risk. So the positive opinion of the central bank about the bill was determined by the approach that the banks are the institutions who are the professionals in managing the forex risk, rather than households who take a 20-year forex loan, and even at this point they may have certain forex income. It doesn't fully guarantee that 20 years down the road the level will stay, especially forex fluctuations. No one is immune from. According to our estimates, we believe it's the banks who, in managing their balance sheet, managing liabilities and assets, have the professional capacity to do it adequately. So what should one do if in the current situation the liabilities of the banks, which are either deposits which have a certain dollarization level, or it's IFI attracted funds, what should they do with those funds? Of course, each bank, depending on its appetite for risks, makes a determination in which segment and what terms and what instruments to steer these funds. It's not impossible that there may be cases when they may exchange the forex assets by activating the derivatives and hedging, which will result in drums increasing. Forward swaps, all sorts of derivatives.
Եթե կարելի է այդ
With your permission,
տնտեսական այդ վերաֆինանսավորման
About
տոկոսադրույքի
refinancing rate.
հարցեր
One
մնացել,
more question
կարծես
that
վերաբերում է
remains in the balance,
տնտեսական դինամիկայի գնահատականին,
which is pertinent in the context of estimating economic dynamics. Concurrently with the Chinese economy opening up, quote-unquote, Russian exports as well as exports of Russian commodities increase towards China. Will this increase economic activity in Russia and as an ancillary effect we fall out in Armenia? If we stick to linear mindset, the most recent statistics contribute that most of the Russian fuel is shifting towards Asia. Their sales are moving from European markets to Asian markets, and of course this may lead to linking us to the volumes of such expansion, because the pipelines are not built overnight. But even if we expect that volume-wise there will be no issues with those exports, and they will be able to sell to India, China and other Asian countries, it all boils down to the price. What would be the price for the fuel? We saw last year that the Russian economic activity was mostly determined by the fact that even exporting less fossil fuel, the prices in the global market allowed Russia to have a certain increase in export. The Russian ruble appreciated with everything that came with it. What if we assume that volume-wise it would be possible mid-term at least to steer those flows to Asian countries and have an acceptable price level which is built into their budget, then I believe there should not be major issues. But there are two ifs here. Volume, will it be possible to reorient quickly enough, and the price. Under these two scenarios we should understand what would transpire with real incomes in Russia, what would naturally happen to the inflation, which is part of adjusting natural incomes, and if economic processes take place in Russia which are positive, they should have also a positive fallout on Armenian economy, since we're members of the Eurasian Economic Union and a significant part of our goods are still exported to the Russian Federation. So alongside the increasing incomes, our economic agents should earn better or more than before. Naturally, this will lead to a question about migration. Will our compatriots continue to be labor migrants in Russia? This is not only an economic issue, it's beyond the economic plane. Nevertheless, since our interrelation level with them is quite high, if there is a positive impact in Russia, it will to some extent be transferred to Armenia as well.
Կապիտալ ներդրումների հետ կապված հանրային
հատկացում ըստ հունվար փետրվարին որոշակի վերանցվել
արդյոք գործադիրի ձեր գործընկերները ներկայացրել համար պատճառները
colleagues from the executive report on the reasons for the shortfall. Annually you estimated that this government program would be implemented even with certain overperformance, if I got it right. What determines this? The rollback. Very important question for us and our colleagues. The relations, in the plane of relations with our colleagues in the cabinet. Since for us, capital expenditures have a great impact on the potential GDP, and the potential GDP correlates to the demand, and we understand what the gap is, and therefore make deductions about the inflation. During the most recent discussion with the cabinet, we acknowledged that there was a certain shortfall in delivering on those plans, but the reasons, most of the reasons were technicalities. If we look at Q1 numbers, there were many cases that upon like 10 days after Q1, those capital expenditures were implemented. I'm not saying this for us to be assured that all capital expenditures have been implemented, but we should converge our efforts on that. It's exactly capital expenditures that create economic potential in the country. On the north-south major segment tenders, there were several sections, but over time there are other projects as well that will be implemented in the course of the year.
Եվ բիզնեսի հետ կապված մեր մասնավորում եք ըստ նկատում ներդրումների դինամիկայի աճ, այսինքն ավելի արագ ներդրումների կատարում կամ դրա այս ակնկալում, սա ինչով եք պայմանավորում ներկայիս միջավայրում։
Investment by businesses. There are several factors here. Essentially, opportunities. Aside from uncertainties, uncertainties also contain opportunities. And secondly, it's the industrial policy of the government. If you look at the re-equipment project, which mostly pertains to the acquisition of equipment, and if you look at the behavior of the forex, which let's say last year run to euro, you will see that there's quite interesting opportunities emerging for businesses for arming themselves with capital and re-equipping their fixed assets. The business just took advantage of these opportunities to increase, if possible, export volumes, not only to the Eurasian Economic Union but elsewhere as well. So those are the main two factors that affected the business decision making. And the year was conducive for businesses as well. This 12.6% of economic growth increased the returns on business. We've seen in the banking sector cases where the businesses pay back their loans before term, which means they have additional incomes. Thank you. So if we exhausted the questions, this is the end of it. Thank you.